That was my introduction and information about me and one of my early sessions with renowned psychiatrist Dr. Caselli. So let me describe my situation. I am stuck in my hotel psychiatric session jail cell as the captive of Dr. Caselli, world-renowned neuropsychiatrist who is so sensitized to racism that he believes everything psychiatric is rooted in two major camps regardless of the cause: racism or hurt, loss, and pleasure. Dr. Caselli rested in a comfortable recliner in the hotel-like hospital jail cell session room and asked me, "Richard, can you explain again why you think you are here in Scottsdale Psychiatric Ward for the criminally insane, here in Arizona?" Yeah, it's hard to fathom that I was in a maximum security psychiatric hospital. This is in fact the beginning of kind of my crazy story. I answered Dr. Caselli the same as I had done every day for the last 3 days that I met with him, that I have been confined to the psychiatric ward of allegedly the country's top-notch hospital and doctors. Well, Dr. Caselli, it is the same thing I say every day when you ask. My daughter lives in Santa Barbara, and I was returning to my hotel room after visiting her. While driving back to the hotel, I saw what looked like a mugger threatening an older couple with a knife on the sidewalk. I thought I had enough experience to deal with the mugger if things were to turn violent. But I also thought that was pretty unlikely. More likely he would just run away. And after all, I had a tire iron behind my seat if something went bad. Not that I'd ever have to use it. But I did keep it there. You know, something could happen someday, and it's a good thing to have a tire iron in a case of emergencies. Sometimes, though, it rattled in the back of the seat. But it was much better to be behind my seat than in the trunk, because in the trunk it always rattled around and I feared it might break something just slamming things. I had slammed the brakes to make a squealing, dramatic stop in front of the mugger, thinking that would scare him off and call attention to anyone else in the scene. I thought it was pretty smart. I stepped out of the car, though, because he did not seem to disengage from mugging these two senior citizens. I was not going to confront him unhanded, so I continued my intimidation tactic. I grabbed the tire iron as I jumped out of the car. I commanded, "Get out of here, get! Leave them alone, or I'm gonna make you get!" The thug did not seem to think I was a legitimate threat. He came at me screaming that I was a mother, effing kind of stuff, fool, and had this coming. He clearly intended to stab me and probably even intended to kill me. I felt justified in my actions when he jumped at me. I swung the tire iron. He had a knife in his hand. I struck it successfully. His wrist, I swear, bent backward like it just shattered like a little piece of rubber as his flesh smashed into his bone. It was really gruesome and it sounded scarily snap-like. His hand was completely shattered, if not beyond use and repair, dangling there as if attached by a fleshy rubber band. It was disgusting. But remarkably, he only got enraged by an utterly destroyed hand. He kept coming at me with one hand limp, dangling while he threw his body at me, tackling, trying to crush me. It was insane. I thought he had no chance of holding me down and striking me with his one hand, no matter how hard he tried to push and pin me. I just rolled him off since he was pretty incapacitated. But reflexively, as I did so, I swung my hand at him. I forgot the tire iron was there. It smashed into his head. His skull, it cracked. Blood flowed all over the place. He collapsed into a heap on the side of the road. I had to presume he was dead. I grabbed my cell phone and I dialed 911. The police and paramedics, they arrived on the scene in minutes. They were fast in Santa Barbara. The police threw me on the ground and arrested me right there on the spot, like I was the murderer. I was the suspect. I killed the man. After all, I'm the bad guy. I exclaimed, "No, I called you. Why are you arresting me?" It did not matter. I tried to explain what happened, but the police said that was for a judge to determine. One officer scoffed, as if some old white dude had any right to stop, much less attack and kill a black man. I realized right then, crap. They were asserting strongly that they're going to arrest me for killing a black man. They were arresting me because I allegedly was a racist old white man that killed somebody who was, of course, not white. All that happened on a Friday night, and so I spent the entire weekend in jail awaiting a Monday hearing with a judge. I guess judges don't work on weekends. Because of that work ethic, I spent those 3 nights in jail. My mother used to say that jail was a college for criminals, that you would network with other criminals and learn about opportunities and techniques to improve your craft as a criminal. I always assumed she knew that because of Silver. And of course, a few random low-life criminals did approach me. They solicited me for buying drugs from them when they got out. One offered his hitman services should I ever need them. Another said he had girls or boys if I wanted them. And my mother was right. One even said, hey, we could hook up if you want a job or something with him later. Amazing to me that all that happened in a tiny Santa Barbara jail. You wouldn't think that kind of element existed in such a so-called nice city. I was utterly dismayed to be offered a few specific opportunities. Smuggle, sell drugs, be a human trafficker like a coyote, support illegal undocumented immigration. Or hey, some even just said flat out, let's break into some stores or some homes. Simple thefts, quick stuff. Some said, we could just do some carjackings. I know a guy in a chop shop. Another one, how ironic, said, we could just mug some people. No one's going to stop us. Wasn't that just so pathetic that he would say that to me? There were plenty of jobs for the underemployed, apparently. You just had to go to your career center, the local jailhouse. Doctor, when I finally saw the judge and explained my actions, he told me that either I plead mental divergence, which apparently is saying I was crazy and thought my actions were justified when they were not, or face a court trial for murder, which would effectively end my life if the jury decided I was not justified in killing the man in self-defense. And even if I was innocent, I would remain in prison until I was convicted or acquitted, all of which they said could be potentially years away. In California, I could only imagine a jury would probably convict most anyone for a murder if they killed someone, even if it was in blatant and clear self-defense. Much less if it was in a gray area like mine, where my confrontation resulted in the man's death, despite it all being to protect an older couple from him and them being witnesses. I just don't understand, Doctor. I thought my situation could be seen at least as gray, and so a jury might let me go. On the other hand, they might convict me. And being an old white male in California, it seemed to me there was no longer gray for my kind of crime. There's no gray for a white old man. Old white males are guilty in California of all crimes and claims. Period. The judge offered a deal and instructed that I should take it, which I felt was more like an ultimatum. The judge told me that I should enter a mental divergence plea to go to a psych ward for therapy. There, the psychiatric ward would decide when, or even if, I would be released. Days, weeks, months, years, my life. It would all be up to them, and not to the court anymore if I had agreed to his mental divergence plea. It was kind of like a no contest plea, so I would not be officially criminal, but I was criminally insane. That label apparently would be attached to me for the rest of my life. It would mean I can't vote, I can't have firearms, all sorts of random rules. Also meant I'd always be monitored by psychiatrists. But on the other hand, there would be no formal sentencing. Because my sentence is, in fact, I am sentenced to the psychiatric ward until I am safe to re-enter society. That's it. Until I am safe to re-enter society. Both options seemed wrong and terrible to me. But when you're facing two impossible choices, you're left with choosing the lesser of the evils. I could roll the dice and chance to end of my life with the courts, or declare myself mentally divergent even though it is entirely inaccurate, and go to a ward. Ultimately, as a conviction or a diagnosis, it didn't really make a difference. So, doctor, here I am. Obviously, I chose mental divergence. I told Dr. Caselli further, by the way, I am impressed with this hotel decor hospital room, but I think the microphone and camera anklet monitoring me 24/7 while I'm in jail in this lockdown environment seems a bit much. Also, you can see the red glow in the lights from the hidden cameras. They're not that hidden. I have noticed the microphones here and there as well, hidden under the couch side table, one over on that shelf. I imagine there are more that I have yet to find. Why do they need to be hidden, since you can record anything and everything I do, anywhere in this facility? Do you think you'll just catch me with my guard down? You have 24/7 monitoring again. I don't understand. And you seem nice and all, but you clearly think no matter what I say, that I'm crazy. Can you explain all that, doctor? Dr. Caselli smiled and said, "You killed a black man not even a week ago, Richard. You do not show any remorse for that action. You do not appear even to believe his death was unjustified. You believe it was justified. Most people would think that is a very unusual response. You even reject all responsibility by defending yourself as being a victim of racism yourself. But it was you that killed a black man. You, Richard, murdered that black man. Are you suppressing your emotions, Richard? Or are you a sociopath? Was this an unthinking act of violence? Or are you really a racist murderer? Was this a temporary, momentary, one-off situation, Richard? Or are you likely to repeat that behavior and recidivist such heinous crimes?" Dr. Caselli sat straight up, very stiffly in his chair, and said forcefully and loudly, louder than he's done before, as if to demand my full attention, "Your murder of a black man is not the only crime you have committed, Richard." He leaned back. I received a list of arrests, detainments, charges, and judgments from numerous states and from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, including Interpol. It seems before your killing of Mr. Floyd, you had a nearly decade of running around the world like a madman and encountered legal trouble seemingly everywhere because of it, and often. I'd like you to discuss these misadventures as we proceed as well, not just your life's history. I want to know about the crazy actions you've taken. It is important that we hear your childhood and adult life and all of these misadventure experiences, as they may cast light on the impetus or your motivation of your current and destructive behavior, and certainly potentially for the murder of that man. I was incensed. Caselli's questions implied I was bad. One way or the other, I was bad. He seemed to imply I was wicked or crazy. He believed simply that I murdered a man, period. And it did not matter that my or other people's lives were endangered. It mattered more that the bad guy was black than anyone else that might have been a victim. It was outrageous. It was near impossible to contain my fury. I suffered one of my PBA crying episodes. I guess that's how it had to come out. My hands clenched, my face crunched, my shoulders squeezed inward and forward, my forehead furrowed so deeply it hurt, My fingers and toes curled in onto themselves. Tears flowed as my mouth contorted and twisted. I was suffering a severe emotional epileptic fit. My nose congested, my eyes blurred, with excessive water flowing everywhere. I whimpered, I sobbed until I could contain it. Finally, a little bit, it burst, it came in, it came out. Moans and sobs. The doctors seemed to think I lost it. I was so guilt-bound, apparently, in their mind, even though it was unrelated. Caselli leaned over and offered me a tissue from a Kleenex box. In a few minutes, the crazy episode subsided. I was able to talk, albeit through a broken voice. Though I had no ability to express my feelings deeply in that moment, I could feel them. They were very intense. I tried. I screamed out, "I spent my entire life being and doing good, and now I'm being judged as anything but good? That's offensive." I clenched my hands in tears and sobbed. They kept flowing. My words were broken, but I said them. And so when I regained control of my body, I let the emotion go as well. It was not worth railing against their collective judgments anymore. I just couldn't do it. Emotions, body, everything. I just slumped in my chair. It was just too much to bear. Caselli leaned back in his recliner as though to de-escalate the situation. "Richard, maybe you can tell me more about your childhood and your career. Help me understand who you are. If I can see that you are psychologically sound and have a complete grasp and control of yourself in the moment and throughout your life, then it would stand to reason that this was a one-off situation you had, and that you will be able to control yourself and ensure that you will not kill someone again. It's up to me, Richard, if or when you are released from this program," the doctor made sure to inform me. "Do you understand that, Richard? I alone will decide if and when you will return to your life outside this institution. Answer me, Richard." I answered, "Yes," broken in my still sobbing. The doctor continued, "Richard, it can be therapeutic to relive old experiences through discussion and therapy. It can be painful too, but that pain is therapeutic and will help me determine how well you handle emotions, now and going forward. It can be hard to remember things all at once. You may even struggle to remember things. Some memories may come out in the context of others. Just tell me what you can remember, in whatever order makes sense to you. If something comes up out of order, that'll be okay. Just tell us. Tell me, so you don't forget it. We want to get everything out in the open about you, Richard. We can come back later to deep dives in any areas that you think need further review. It may be easier to share your history in terms of categories like preteen childhood, teen childhood, education and learning, young adult, profession and career, and so forth. I imagine there will be all sorts of crossovers there, but that's okay too. Some things later in life make more sense to talk about early in life and vice versa. It is up to you, Richard, how you want to tell your story." Dr. Caselli seemed to gesture that maybe I should continue. But then he leaned forward as though not to. He clearly had to be in control. "Richard, when the day arrives that we can agree you are ready to return to your life outside this facility, we will assign 3 psychiatrists, Dr. Hyder, Dr. Bradbury, and Dr. Garcia. They will all act as sort of parole officers for you. They will serve as my advisors as well during your recovery and assessment here. They will get to know you as I get to know you. You must comply with their prescriptions as you do with mine, and their directions as you do with mine, or you will be returned to us, even if released, in accordance with the court order and a release agreement." if we even get to that point of your recovery. Do you understand, Richard? Queried Dr. Caselli. I answered sarcastically at this point. Yes, I understand. I will be assessed by you and the good doctors Hyder, Bradbury, and Garcia for my ability to just live my ordinary life and do my job and not help anybody who's in trouble. Until I pass your judgment day, I will be locked up in here, and even when I pass J-Day, I will be on psychiatric probation with Bradbury for a very, very long time, maybe even my entire life. I will have no freedom or liberty ever again. Is that right, Dr. Caselli? Caselli smiled. Good, you understand the situation. Your perspective on judgment and probation appears rather defensive, and does undermine your claim that you are good to go. In fact, I think your expressed views definitively show you are in great need to be here much longer, Richard. I look forward to our getting to know each other. I did not like Caselli's evident preconceived judgment. Well, I had no choice. Dr. Caselli was in charge of my life, no matter how much I despised that idea. Dr. Caselli continued, I will introduce you to Dr. Bradbury, Dr. Garcia, and Dr. Hyder since they operate near where you lived. We can forge relationships with Dr. Bradbury, Garcia, and Hyder as we progress in our sessions today and going forward. They will be joining us on video conference, explained Caselli. I am sure they will hear your background tomorrow and participate in all of our sessions going forward. As you said, we will do this every session to make progress. I will look to see if we can have daily sessions as well so that we can maintain recovery momentum. Caselli tapped once, swiped across, and tapped again on his wristwatch, which appeared to be a wireless command interface into the hospital. A nurse came in and placed an iPad on a little stand that could see both the doctor and me. A few taps on the tablet and its conference app popped up, and the faces of my future parole officer psychiatrists appeared in little windows. The nurse smiled with the connections made and walked out without saying a word. Dr. Caselli, Bradbury, Hyder, and Garcia introduced themselves, and Caselli launched straight into it. Let's not waste time here. Dr. Bradbury's, Garcia's, and Hyder's time is precious. Caselli leaned back in his chair and in his soft but firm, resolute voice directed, Richard, please tell us about your childhood from as early as you can remember. I sat up in the oversized reclining couch chair in the ward hospital interrogation room as I perceived it. I could not help but think how many times I had heard the word doctor since I had been incarcerated in this nut house. I really would think everyone knows who a doctor is around here, so why does everyone have to say the word? I have to say it apparently out of respect. It seemed pointless to me outside of a personal pride and hubris to demand it be spoken in a place where most everyone seems to be a doctor or a patient. Now, I do support being called a doctor when it's the normal thing and it's relevant to where you are to recognize someone's critical skills. But when you're in the hospital environment where you're dealing with nothing but doctors, it seems kind of obvious. Oh well. I did not go around and assert, I'm an engineer, I'm Richard the CTO, I'm in charge. You get the idea. Dr. Caselli was definitely not like me. He was very arrogant, conceited. Caselli tapped his pen on his clipboard and said more loudly and very firmly, Richard, please tell us about your childhood now. I began recounting my stories and memories.